Hi everybody, I'm Sheena and welcome to my channel. I recently got introduced to BookTube and I'm kind of addicted to it now. So I wanted to give having my own channel a go. I wanted to start off today talking about the 5 books that have had the biggest influence on me as a reader. So I'm going to start out chronologically. The first book I've got here is Meet Kirsten. And yes, it's an American Girl book. I knew how to read for several years, but it wasn't until I picked up one of the Kirsten books that reading became one of my favorite things. I didn't really enjoy it. I would have preferred to go outside and play. But Kirsten really spoke to me as a character. She's a 9-year-old girl who immigrates from Sweden to the Midwestern United States. And she's suffers several tragedies on the way. She ends up losing her best friend. And even once she gets to her destination, she's kind of isolated. There's a language barrier. She's living with family that she's never even met before. And that just really spoke to me on a personal level because I myself came from a pretty isolated background. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. And I had trouble making friends and communicating with the other kids around me, not necessarily because of a language barrier, but just lack of common interest. So she really spoke to me on a personal level, and that was the first book where it was like I wish that this character was my best friend. And along that same vein, my second book is a classic. And it is A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I don't have the copy of A Little Princess that I used to read all the time as a kid. What I have is Sarah Crew. And this is the short story that the novel was based off of. Sarah Crew is a wealthy little girl who goes to a boarding school in London when her father goes off to war. And while she's there, she makes all these friends and everything's lovely, and then her father dies suddenly and loses everything. So she goes from being the most adored student in the school to basically being the hired help, except she's not actually hired. She's basically a slave. And the way that she deals with her problems is through her imagination, and I really love that because I had that isolated background, and I basically lived in my head for many years as a child because I didn't have anyone to talk to, didn't really have anyone to be around. Sarah Crew was kind of a role model for me because she was able to get through all of these hard things on her own and make a better world for herself in her head, even if she couldn't experience it in the real world. And thankfully she does get her happy ending in this story. The next book is one that I don't know very many people who have read, but it is one that I don't even know how many times I've read this. So many times. It is Spying on Miss Mueller by Eve Bunting. And it's about these 4 girls who go to an Irish boarding school during World War II. And some strange things start to happen around the school. There's these rumors, and they start to think that their favorite teacher, who is German, is actually a Nazi spy. So the 4 of them set out on a mission to prove or disprove her guilt. And at the same time, there's also a ghost story in here. It's also, a boarding school story and historical fiction. So it's all of those sort of genres in YA that I grew to really love as a kid. I almost feel redundant mentioning it just because it's every time somebody does one of these lists, it's on there pretty much. And that is Harry Potter. If I were being honest, it would actually be Prisoner of Azkaban, but Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is the first one in the series. I read these after probably 2 years of nagging from my best friend in middle school. I didn't want to read them because it was so popular and it was a boy's story, and I wanted a book that had a female heroine because that's just the way I am. I think I've always been a feminist. And I finally sat down and read it, and I read the first book in 2 or 3 days, and then I went back to the library for the second one, and they didn't have it, so I read the third one, and I absolutely adore it. Remus and Sirius are to this day my absolute favorite characters in the entire series. I will go to the mat for them. Still have not forgiven J.K. Rowling for killing them off. But yeah, they just, these books, again, it's about escapism and getting away from reality and going from being that kid that no one wants to hang around to being the one that saves the world. And I absolutely loved them. My last book, it's something that I actually started reading right after Harry Potter. I think it was recommended to me while I was reading Harry Potter. And this was my first introduction to high fantasy and my first introduction to LGBTQ. I think I got the acronym right. I think so. Literature. And that is the Last Herald Mage trilogy by Mercedes Lackey. This is the first book, Magic's Pawn, and it's about a boy named Vaniel, who is the son of a lord, and his dad is like really tough and wants him to be, you know, all macho and masculine, and he's like, you know, I'm just gonna go over here and play some music. That's what I want to do. And he gets beaten up and ridiculed and just doesn't have a very good home life because of it. So he's finally sent to live with his aunt, and it's supposed to be a punishment. But then they discover that he's chosen, which means that he becomes one of the protectors of this kingdom. And it turns out that he is really, really powerful. And he finds people who actually love him for who he is, and he's able to basically become one of the most important people that this world has ever known. Those are the top 5 books that have influenced me as a reader. If you want, you can leave your list of the books that have influenced you the most below. And let me know what you think. I know my lighting kind of sucks today because I live in an apartment and our lighting just sucks. I'm doing my best to counteract that, but it's kind of a losing battle here. But let me know what you think below, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Thanks.